people who live in bodies like yourself, or people who have multiple oppressed identities, understand intersectionality and the need to be able to show up as they are on a very deep level. People who have fewer marginalized or oppressed identities often feel shame because like I benefit from the way that these systems are. Like, it's not okay for me to be this, right? And when I'm having this conversation, I imagine we're all thinking about like straight white men, right? And straight white men being defensive about us naming these problems. And we want you to be who you are too. We just want you to be who you are in a space where that is not what is considered good, right, holy, and the objective that everyone should be striving to. Everybody's perspectives need to be included and belong and celebrated. And yours do too. Just like tone it down a bit, not tone it down. And maybe it's not even tone it down, as I'm thinking that through, and because like I think it's important to hear people like struggle in articulating this. Make space, right? Sometimes that logistically means backing up, but like we're not always dealing in scarcity and finite resources. Including other people from other marginalized backgrounds and identities does not necessarily, it can be, but does not necessarily mean like there is less for you.
Yeah.
Those are lots of things that came up in your responses. And now I hand it back over to you.
Yes, to all of that. One of the things that comes to mind, and this is a conversation that I had with somebody recently on same person, same conversation on 2 different occasions, where it's that what about us? Not so much like the scarcity mindset of like, losing resources, but like, what about us? And even in that, I find that perspective to be really harmful, because if a person who has any or multiple marginalized identities is in a conversation with someone who does have more social power and privilege, like a cishet white man, to be sharing the perspectives about the lived experiences of marginalized people, and then be met with, well, yeah, but also what about us? Think about the things that we are experiencing and suffering because of the swinging pendulum of social justice. It immediately almost dismisses and even diminishes the experience that I'm trying to put forth of like, it's this recentering of whiteness of like, yeah, I hear you, but we're still really important. Nobody's saying that you're not important. We're saying that we also need support here, and you have the power and privilege to do so.
Yeah, and I think the narrative around what about us like is in some ways like rooted in scarcity, right? Because like when you've known something to be like, when you've been centered all of your life, to like have anything different is like that's like something being taken away from me. And like, I guess like in some ways, like, yes, there is not as much attention like put towards you in like, we have a 60-minute meeting to talk about XYZ things. And just because we're not talking about the things that you think are important doesn't mean that you're not important. There are just like other people who are important, and don't be mad that other people's perspectives are being uplifted and that yours is not the only one now being considered. Right. And I'm wary, I'm reflecting on us having this conversation and me bringing up like, yeah, and this is like what white people are experiencing. And I'm thinking about the perception of like, yeah, and like you're continuing to center white narratives. And like, I think that's very true. Like that is what's happening right now. And doing it for the sake of, let's talk about this and like be able to identify when that's happening. How do you, as a person who is doing this work professionally as a consultant, or even like in your personal life with, we can say white people, but like with people with centered or privileged identities, how do you encourage them to see things differently?
It's always about questions, asking questions to get them to, get curious. So if you had been a client asking me that question, I probably would have asked you, okay, well, why is that a question in your mind? Where does that come from? And
Mm-hmm.
give them time and space to think about it, because usually it is a narrative that has been absorbed through a lifetime of conditioning and what have been the standard social norms. So it's always
Yeah.
about asking questions and expanding on that curiosity, and from depending on whatever their answers are, it opens up a dialogue and we start uncovering things, and it gets them to consider how they can think about things differently.